taking a look at lesson 5 of chapter 4 today, our focus is going to be on adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Okay, so hopefully after you're done watching this video, you're going to feel comfortable with adding and subtracting those mixed numbers. Please remember and take note that if it's a mixed number, what that means is it's going to have a whole number and then a fractional part. Examples of mixed numbers could be 2 and 1/2. Okay, 2 would be your whole number portion, 1/2 is the fractional portion. Another example could be 10 and 5/6. Again, 10 would be the whole number portion, 5/6 would be the fractional portion. So we're going to be focusing on how we add and subtract those types of numbers. Okay, you guys have been working a lot with adding and subtracting fractions in general in terms of like and unlike fractions, so we're going to be utilizing what we've learned prior to today's lesson to help us out with adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Okay, one of the things that's really important and really critical that you want to remember is when you're adding or subtracting mixed numbers, you're going to add or subtract your fractional part first. Okay, work with the fractional part first, then the whole number portion later. Okay, we may have to rename a little bit using your least common denominator, and then we're going to work with or add or subtract our whole numbers, okay, if necessary. One of the other things to remember to consider here is that the fact that sometimes when we are subtracting mixed numbers, the fraction in the first mixed number is less than the fraction in the second mixed number. So in this case, we're going to have to rename both of them, which goes back to your basic subtraction skills that you guys had learned anyway in terms of renaming. So we're going to be taking a look at that today as well. Okay, so again, you can see here looking at example 1, they're taking 7 and 4/9 plus 10 and 2/9. First thing you want to do is look at your denominators on your fractions. In this case, they're both 9, so we can go ahead and add our numerators. Okay, so 4 plus 2 would give us 6. Okay, you can see 4 plus 2 equals 6. Most of the time when you guys are working on these, when you're adding and subtracting mixed numbers, it's easiest to write them in vertical form. Okay, just as like when you're working on adding or subtracting 2, 3, 4, 5-digit numbers, when we're subtracting, let's say I'm going to subtract 125 minus 76, it's easier for us to write it in vertical form. So you're going to notice when we're working with mixed numbers, most of the time they're going to be writing those in vertical form because it makes it easier, especially if we have to rename. So again, 4 plus 2 gives us 6. Denominator stays the same as 9. Then I'm going to go ahead and add my whole number portion, so 7 plus 10 is 17. 6/9 can be reduced down. You can divide both of those by 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, 9 divided by 3 is 3. Therefore, we come up with 17 2/3. Taking a look at example 2, again, we're going to start looking at the fractional portion. So I'm taking 8 and 5/6 minus 2 and 1/3. Rewrote it in vertical form to make it easier. I do not have a common denominator. Okay, we do not have a common denominator, so that's the first thing that we are going to need to do. You're going to ask yourself, what would be a number that both 3 and 6 would go into? 6 does work, so I would recommend keeping this as the same. You don't have to change it. So we're renaming it as 8 and 5/6, leaving it there, moving it over to help us subtract. 1/3 would be the same as 2 6. 3 times 2 is 6, so 1 times 2 is 2. Whole number portion stays the same, so now we're taking 8 and 5/6 minus 2 and 2/6. I can go ahead and subtract my numerators. 5 minus 2 is 3. 8 minus 2 is 6, and our denominator was 6. So we have 6 and 3/6. 3/6 can be reduced down into 1/2. Okay, some practice problems that you're going to see here on the bottom of page 300. If I take a look at got it problem letter A, I have 6 and 1/8 plus 2 and 5/8. One of the things that you're going to notice is that your denominators are already the same, which means we can go ahead and add our numerators. So 5 plus 1 would give me 6. Denominator stays as an 8. Okay, 6 plus 2 is 8. Now I need to make sure that I reduce. So I'm asking myself what would be a number or what would be a factor of both 6 and 8. They both can be divided by 2. So I'm going to end up with 8. 6 divided by 2 would be 3. 8 divided by 2 would be 4. So we have 8 and 3/4. We take a look at letter D. I'm subtracting, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this right away to make it easier. Common denominator, I've got a 5 and a 10, so I'm going to probably leave the bottom one the same as 1 and 3/10. Okay, I'm going to rewrite the top one. 5 times 2 is 10, 4 times 2 is 8. So we have 5 and 8/10. I can go ahead and subtract my numerators. 8 minus 3 would be 5. Denominator stays the same as 10. 5 minus 1 is 4. Now 5/10 can be reduced down to 1/2, so I'm going to rewrite it as 4 and 1/2. If I take a look at letter B up here, again I'm adding. I need to find a common denominator. So I'm going to probably use 10. This one's already 10, so I'm going to leave that. Five times 2 is 10, so 1 times 2 would be 2. Whole number is 5. You can go ahead and add those. 2 plus 3 is 5 over 10. 5 plus 2 is 7. And 7 and 5/10 is going to reduce down to 7 and 1/2. Looking at letter E, we're subtracting on this one. So I'm going to rewrite it as 13 and 7/8 minus 9 and 3/4. Common denominator I'm going to leave and use 8. So this one's going to stay the same. So I'm going to leave it as 13 and 7/8 minus 4 times 2 is 8. So 3 times 2 is 6. Whole number portion stays the same. 7 minus 6 is 1. Denominator is 8. 13 minus 9 is 4. And that's in lowest terms. As I take a look at letter C, okay, I've got 1 and 5/9 plus 4 and 1/6. Common denominator that I could use for both of those would be 18. 6 times 3 is 18. 1 times 3 is 3. Whole number portion is 4. Please do not forget to carry that over and keep it with it. 9 times 2 is 18. 5 times 2 is 10 with the 1, and I am adding. So I've got 10 plus 3 is 13 over 18. 1 plus 4 is 5, and that is in lowest terms. Looking at letter F, I'm going to rewrite it as 8 and 2/3 minus 2 and 1/2. Common denominator for 3 and 2 is going to be 6. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite that. 3 times 2 would be 6. 2 times 2 is 4. Bring my 8 over. 2 times 3 is 6. So 1 times 3 is 3. Bring my 2 over. I'm going to go ahead and subtract those. 4 minus 3 is 1. 6. 8 minus 2 would be 6. And that is in lowest terms. Again, when you are working on these, couple things to remember. Number 1, take a look at your denominator. Make sure you find that least common denominator. Number 2, make sure that you carry the whole number portion with it. Rewrite them in vertical form. It makes it a lot easier when you are working with them. Number 3, don't forget to make sure that you have your whole number portions with them and keep things lined up. And then last but not least, make sure when you're finding your answers, make sure that they are in simplest form. All right, as we take a look at the top of 301, we're going to be continuing to work with adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Okay, so you can see here they've got 2 and 1/3 minus 1 and 2/3. Okay, both of my denominators are the same. So now I would be thinking 1 minus 2. Now that becomes a problem because if we try to take 1 minus 2, we're going to end up with a negative number. Okay, and so what they're going to ask you to do is to actually rename them. So technically, we're actually going to borrow from the 2. Okay, we're actually going to borrow from the 2. So I'm actually crossing this 2 out and I'm going to call it a 1. Okay, now the value of 1, okay, would be the same as 3/3. Now, what you're probably asking why I'm picking 3/3. What I did is I'm looking at what my denominator already is. Okay, and so because my denominator was a 3, then I'm going to use 3 as a denominator and then 3 as a numerator because 3 over 3 is the same as 1. And that 1's coming from what we borrowed here. So I'm taking one whole number away and I'm adding it here as a fraction. So I had 1 plus 3 to get 4. Now I can take 4 minus 2 and get 2. Denominator stays as 3. 1 minus 1 would be 0. So our answer is 2/3. So what you are doing is you're renaming just as you would if it was a regular subtraction problem. The other option you have is you could write them as improper fractions. Okay, so when we start off with 2 1/3, remember we could write it as an improper. 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7, so we could call it 7/3. Minus 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5 over 5/3. Then we could subtract 7 minus 5 and get 2, and denominator is 3. Okay, either method is fine. The one thing you are going to want to remember is if this would turn out to be an improper, please make sure that you do look to change that back, okay, as a mixed number. In terms of methods, though, you can use whatever's easiest for you. Okay, just looking at a couple of these here. If I take a look at letter G, we have 7 minus 1 1/2. Okay, well there's nothing here for me to take 1 away from, so because there's nothing there, I'm going to borrow one whole number from the 6 or from the 7. So I'm taking 1 away, and it's going to be a 6. My denominator here was a 2, so I'm just going to rewrite it as 2 over 2. This 2 over 2 is the same as 1, and that's what we borrowed right here. Now I can take 2 minus 1 and get 1. Denominator is 2. 6 minus 1 is 5, and there's my answer. Taking a look at letter H, I've got 5 3/8 minus 4 and 11/12. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find a common denominator. I'm thinking I'm going to use 24. So 8 times 3 is 24, 3 times 3 would be 9, bringing my 5 over, minus 12 times 2 is 24, 11 times 2 is 22, and then I'm bringing my 4 over. Now, as I take a look, I can't take 9 minus 22, so I'm going to borrow from the 5, I'm going to borrow 1, and that becomes a 4. I'm going to add on one whole number, but I'm going to call it 24 over 24. Again, I'm doing that because my denominator was 24, so I'm leaving it. 24 plus 9 would give us 33. So I have 4 and 33 24ths plus 4, or excuse me, minus 4 and 22 24ths. So 33 minus 22 would be 11 24ths. 4 minus 4 is 0. Go ahead and try letter G, H, I, and L. Pause the video to complete those, and then I will show you what those answers should be. For letter G, should have 5 1/2. For letter H, 11 24ths. For letter I, 8 4/5. For letter J, 4 1/4. For letter K, 1 1/2. And then for letter L, 10 1/6. So hopefully you were able to get those answers, whether it was via renaming them or changing them to the improper and subtracting that way. Again, making sure that they are in simplest form. You are going to make sure that you need to take your time when you are working through this. Number 1, so you don't miss signs. Number 2, so you don't make any subtraction mistakes. Number 3, so you don't make any renaming mistakes. So please make sure you take your time on these. You can go ahead and take a minute right now and go ahead and read through example 4. Okay, the story problem that they have, and see how they come up with those. Once you're done reading example 4, then go ahead and work on the guided practice questions on page 302, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pause the video to do those. After you have completed questions 1, 2, 3, and 4 on your guided practice, let's go ahead and check those. When you are working through question number 1, we're adding 8 1/2 plus 3 4/5. You can see on the board that your answer should have been 12 3/10. We take a look at question number 2, we're subtracting 7 5/6 minus 3 1/6. So your common denominator is already there. 5 minus 1 is 4/6. 4/6 reduces down to 2/3, and then 7 minus 3 would be 4. So your answer should be 4 2/3. Taking a look at number 3, you've got 11 minus 6 3/8. Got a whole number minus a mixed number. And so when you subtract those, you're going to want to borrow. This would become a 10, and 8/8 minus 6 3/8. Subtracting those, you would get 4 and 5/8. And then taking a look at number 4, how much more gasoline is needed to fill the tank. We're looking at 11 and 9/10, and then it's containing 8 and 3/4. So the difference between those two, are subtracting those. How much more gas do we need? We need 3 and 3/20 gallons. Please go ahead right now and work on your practice problems, and then go ahead and have those checked by your teacher.